Hi everybody, this is Miguel Rubio Lastra for the podcast KodigoK. Today's episode we are going to talk about a job that all of you know, of course, but the people who is working here, they're usually anonymous. Nobody knows what they are doing. It will be very clarified to know about this role into the industry of the video games exactly, and I hope all of us we can learn a lot. Hello everybody. We have a narrative designer with us today. He's a lead narrative designer in Virtuos China for 6 months. He has been in this industry for 15 years. He has been in the industry. He's a writer, comic creator, narrative designer for 6 years, and he has been the whole involved in the writing for more than 15 years. He has a lot of publications, of course. He has been teacher. He's also guest speaker. He has made video games, comic, books, stories. He has a very good blog that you should follow. The blog is, I will write in the description of the video, is Kelly Bender writer.blogspot.com. Hi, how is everything, Kelly? How is everything there?
Hey, Miguel. Great to talk to you. I'm glad to be here today with you.
Good. Very nice. I find you in the LinkedIn because I was checking the Virtuos webs, and when I found you, it was like, wow, good. This guy, I should interview him because you have a lot of experience there, and it's not very usual when people, they are writers like you, checking how many years you have been in publishing books and comics. And when you're a writer, to jump from the publishing, traditional publishers, to the games, to the video games, is not something usual. How did you do that? Or what's in your mind?
Yeah, great question. Actually, it all was. There's no typical path, right? Like where, especially as a writer, right? Like where if you go to art school, you can learn how to animation, or if you go to game design school, you can learn how to game design, and eventually they'll teach you the skill sets, and you just transition right into it. Where on the writing side, when I graduated, I never even thought about being a professional writer or a video game writer. So I actually was in childcare. So I was in childcare for multiple years of working with children. And then when I became a stay-at-home dad, when my child was born, that's when I started dedicating my time to writing. And so I wanted to write a movie script. I researched how to write a movie script. I wrote the movie script. I found out very quickly it's hard to make those and very expensive to make those, and they don't tend to get made. And so then I ended up switching my gear to writing comic books. And so then I did my research, talked to some online pros, went to some conventions and figured out, and I was always a comic book fan. And then, figured out how to write those. And then next, I just started writing them, and just one story led to another story, led to another story, led to another story. And, 6 years later, I was, a published indie comic book author with over 40 books out, and people were paying me to write their stories. And then I eventually met the people at Ubisoft in Singapore, where I moved with my ex-wife for her job. And they brought me in for a writer's test. I got the writer's test. They brought me in for a 6-month contract to work on Assassin's Creed Odyssey. It was going great. They extended my contract again, and then I was like, I like this video game thing. And it was one of those things where, coming from like indie comic books where you write the story in January, you don't get paid until like July if you're lucky, right?
Yes.
Where it was nice coming from this to like also this collaborative, this amazing collaborative environment, especially at the top level of the industry. But it was really one of those sink or swim moments where it's like, okay, here's the deep water, here's some sharks in the pool. let's see how you can do it.
Yeah.
And luckily I had a lot of supportive people around me who helped me. I learned a lot. I asked a lot of questions. Learning the software was the hardest part, to be honest with you, was learning how to use their proprietary software, Oasis.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know the software, it doesn't matter how good of a writer you are. If you can't communicate on the software, because the software communicates to all the other departments, right? So it communicates to the cinematographies, it communicates to the level designers, the art designers, all those people. And so if you can't do that properly, they got to get rid of you. And luckily, I was able to get on board with that and go from there. And then that's how I basically got into the video game industry.
Yeah, I see. Because of that, I have so many questions about that. Because, for example, when you say about this is coming to my mind that it's very, very important to have this kind of like, how to say, the networking. I mean, to meet other people who is there. So it's not something like you are doing the research and you say, oh, I think video games is nice. Not just you meet some people, and after that they introduce you about this. And for me, I think there is a question very important, because I'm also coming from the publicity for the traditional publishing books. And when I check what is the narrative designer in video games, of course there is a relation, but it's very, very different. For me, it was a shock because a lot of software to use. So what is the really, when you mention about the difficult part is how to use the software, can you go a little bit with more details about that? Because what is exactly the software that you use and how it works? I know it's very difficult if we have not the pictures or video to do it, but let me know a little bit about it.
Sure, sounds good. Let me start at the first point. The most important thing is to put yourself out there. And yeah, like a lot of it was networking, right? What I always tell people is make sure it's your name, make sure it's your face, make sure the people get to know who you are as a human being, right? It's the most important thing, is because they need to know who you are and get that personal connection before they start doing the professional connection. So you should always act and behave and represent yourself professionally online. So that's the most important thing. And that's why if you look on me and you want to find me, Kelly Bender 17, I'm Kelly Bender. I'm easy to find, I'm easy to Google, because I've made myself a point that way, right? As a professional comic book writer, I had to, right? Because I am the brand, right? And because you have to build yourself as the brand, you have to build yourself as the selling point. And so as a writer, that's what I had to do, right? And I've gotten used to that. As far as the software goes, obviously there's no industry standard. So that's the most important thing that everybody has to understand, is there's zero industry standard when it comes to what software uses, what game engines, whatever, right? And obviously there's a bunch of different levels as well, right? There's AAA, which is, your Ubisoft, your Rockstar, your Crystal Dynamics, all those guys, right? Those guys have their own proprietary softwares. So they're not even using Unreal or Unity. They're using their own proprietary softwares to build their own stuff inside, which is also why these games take longer, right? They take 4 or 5 years to build, because they're building the software as they're doing it. And then what they do is they build multiple games off of that software. But you have to learn the ins and outs of the software, right? You have to learn how it connects. So when I write a script, you're typically writing it as a screenplay type script, right? So you have your setting, you have little notes. The setting would go directly to your cinematographer, to your level designer. So that's what they're looking at, right? You have your notes, and that's going to the level designer. Then you have your character, right? So you put the character name in there, and then you do at, which is basically what it is it's at the direction they're looking at, right? So you can do at this person, away, you can do down, you can do up, if you want to, some poses and stuff like that, and then you can also do a hashtag, which is your facial expression, and that's what you have to learn how to do these things, right? Because you have to know, because you're literally putting it in there. When they refresh the engine, your scene is almost automatically in the game already. Now, obviously, it's just like bits and pieces, right? It's not fully addressed and all that, but at least you get an understanding of the location of where it is, and all those things. And these are the things you have to know, right? And you also have to know to make sure that your branching dialogue doesn't break, because if your branching dialogue breaks, it crashes, and so therefore the level crashes, right? And so then we have to go back and redo it, right? So these are all the things you have to do, and comic books taught me that. Comic books taught me to work in a collaborative environment. But the difference is when you're a comic book, especially indie comic book, I'm not only the writer, I'm also the director, I'm the publisher, I'm the producer, I'm the art director, I'm the cinematographer.
Yes.
I'm all these guys, right? And so, but it also taught me how to speak directly to people to get the most out of them, right? Because in the comic books, you have to get right to the point, right? You have to make your words very clear, and you have to communicate and collaborate with your team, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to communicate with the artist of what is relevant in the scene that he has to draw in the scene. What is the main focal point? And then I have to verify it. Okay, yeah, art directed. Yep, that's fine, good. Then it goes to the inker. Then it goes to the colorist. Then it goes to the letterer, and so on, right? But it's a collaboration, and knowing that each person has their own role to play, and to trust them that they know how to do their role. And that's the most important thing. Is that especially when you start getting to the higher levels, the AAA studios, you are basically pigeonholed and you're a writer. That's what you are. You're narrative designing, and yes, you're working with the guys, right? But everybody on the team has to say, everybody is the exact same level, and you're following one person's vision. And so you have to be able to work within this collaborative environment. And the other good thing about comic books is that it teaches you to choose your words very carefully. You don't tend to waste words when it comes to comic books, right? Because you're limited by the panel size and the balloon size for the dialogue, right? And so you don't go into rambling sentences, which I am doing right now as I'm talking. But when I'm writing, I make sure I slow down. I make sure I pick the right words to use, and you have to make sure the right 10 words convey just as much meaning as 30 words or more, right? And that's the thing, is you have to understand, especially in video games, is that it's a playing interactive thing, but they're not there to watch and they're not there to read. They want to get the fastest information, the most relevant information, and they want to be able to go on and do their tasks, right? Now obviously you want to build story and you want to build depth and character and emotions into these things, right? But you can do that with the right choice. But also a lot of that collaboration, that's where it comes in with the level designers, the cinematographers, the lighting guys, the sound guys, the music, the tone, all those things, right? And so it really is a collaborative effort. So those are the most important things. But yeah, learning the software is the most important. But honestly, I haven't had to work in Unity or Unreal ever in my career. For 7+ years, 30+ published video games, majority of my work is done in Excel. I see.
Because I guess it's very, very complicated too, because you need to coordinate with so many people. So I guess we have a kind of like steps. What is, for example, who is telling you, Kelly, I want you to write, this is the story, bam, 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 bam. Let me know, write this, write the dialogues or write the story. What do you need to do in this when you have a general, because I guess you have a general story about for example, about the narrative of a game, and maybe somebody's telling you, write the dialogues, write the story. How is that? First,
so
the steps and the roles that you need to do.
Sure. Let's start with an ideal situation. Okay, and the ideal scenario would be the ideal scenario for a narrative designer to bring them onto the product is the second you determine what the core gameplay mechanics are going to be. So the second you determine what the core gameplay mechanics is going to be, let's say it's shooting. Let's say it's a shooting game. Okay, so shooting is the core gameplay mechanic. At that point, the narrative designer should be brought in to help brainstorm themes and ideas. Like is it a zombie apocalypse? Is it aliens? Is it Wild Wild West? What is it, right? So then I would just do a high level concept design document, which would basically be, here's zombie apocalypse, here's the top 5 movies, here's the top 5 video games, here's the the genres, here's the different things, right? And I would do that for each one of those things, right? Whether it's pirates, space, aliens, whatever, right? And I would do that.
It sounds very beautiful what you are talking about.
Well, like I said, this is ideal best case scenario, right? And this rarely ever happens, by the way. But then what would happen is the marketing team would then do their job, and they investigate which ones, see what the competitors are doing, see what the Hollywood's doing, all these other things, and say, okay, hey, you know what, pirates are in now. Okay, cool, let's do a pirate shooting game, right? And then from there, I would then do another high level and just come up with the concept of a story. Okay, like are we marooned? Are we crash landed? Is it like what type of gameplay. And while we're doing this, the team is just developing the game system, right? So what is the secondary gameplay? You know, like, is it, oh, now it's tower defense. Okay, great. Okay, so it's shooting and tower defense. Okay, cool. Those are our gameplays, and then we start building the story off of that. And then all this is internal conversations, documentations, approvals, meetings, all those things, right? And then once we get a concept going, then it's like, okay, then it's my job to sit down and say, okay, let's start building this world. Well, how are we going to populate the world, right? And which actually brings us, I just did an article on world building with GameDesignSkills.com on world building, which is basically these are the steps you do, right? So once you get the world, well, what's in the world, right? Okay, well, we know we got pirates, okay? So because that's what the marketing team came back with is pirates. Then it's like, okay, well, what else are we going to populate with pirates? Okay, you know, like, what are the enemies of pirates? You know, okay, we got the British, we got the French, we got the Spaniards, we got all these other things, right? And then also we got other pirates, right? And then we could also have cannibals, maybe, right? Depending on, you know, like where we want to set this, right? And then it's like, but then you start going through this list of, okay, what's technology? You know, what's the level of currency? What's the level of magic? You know, is there supernatural in this thing, right? Can we have ghost pirates like Pirates of the Caribbean did and all these things, right?
And you need to decide about that.
I need to sort of establish. I don't decide at all, right? So the biggest thing is I need to allow for the possibility that this could occur.
Okay.
So when you do, nothing is designed in an infinite vacuum, right? So what I have to do is I have to say, okay, especially because if it's a AAA game, now AAA games are open world, but their stories are very closed.
Yeah.
Right. When you look at that compared to a mobile game, where a year 2 mobile game looks nothing like the year 1 mobile game, right? And then a year 5 mobile game looks nothing like the year 1 mobile game, right? Because you keep adding and adding and adding and adding. And so if you build your world in a mobile game, I always ask the question, where's my dragon? That's the first question I ask my producers, where's my dragon? And then the producer might be like, no, there's no dragons, it's pirates. I'm like, yeah, but I need to know what the biggest, massivest, biggest, baddest thing is going to be, because then I have to allow all that stuff in between, right? Because when you're designing a mobile game, especially a mobile game world, you're not designing it for the year 1. You're also not designing it for that producer. You're designing it for year 3 and producer 2. Because, you know, if it's successful, then that producer's going to move on to another thing. Then another producer's going to come on. But the problem is the players keep growing and building and going, right? So you have to, okay, what are we going to have next? What are we going to have next? And I have to allow for this at the very concept of the world design. I have to allow for this iteration, the possibility. Because if I don't, then I've done a disservice to the IP and the brand.
I see. I'm writing some questions to ask you about that. But do you know any, for example, samples about very good narrative in the games, or games with a good narrative, or games with bad narrative? Do you know any sample that is coming to your mind?
I mean, there's lots. So there's lots. But the thing is, I mean, it's also one of those things where narrative designer has only been around for like 5, 6 years, 7 years max, right? Especially like most studios didn't have it, right? Really, it was just, okay, hey, the game designers would do the writing, we also are coming to an age now where we're building these multi-platform IPs, right? And so now you're looking at, I'll give you an example, a bad narrative. It's actually a game I worked on, was Clash of Kings. Clash of Kings is a game that's it's 8 years old now, still going strong, still one of the most famous mobile battle royale games and tower defense games. I came on that project. It was already year 5, and I'm looking at them like, there's no story here. There's no story. Like there's all it is just like there's kings and then there's bad guys. That's it. And there's no overall threat.
It was decided before.
It was also done by Chinese company, and they didn't. All they knew was, okay, well, this game over here is doing very successful. We're going to make our own version of it, and then we're going to throw in, like white-haired dragon ladies are popular right now. Let's throw those in, right? And so it wasn't very concocted, and it wasn't very well put together. And so the first thing I did was looked at it. I wanted to look at, okay, how can we one, we're trying to get new players into the game, right? So like there's a very steady people of just dedicated followers who love that game, can play that game. They've been playing it for 8 years, but we're trying to get new players, right? So, well, new players are expecting story. New players are expecting, they're expecting these things that didn't exist 7 years ago, right? And so I was looking at how do we do that? Well, let's create a threat. Let's create this and that, right? And then, but also like we even did surveys with the players, like they couldn't even name the main characters.
Yeah, I see.
because they weren't developed enough, right? And so that's where and now obviously going forward, it's like, okay, we got to build these IP characters, right? Because if you want a Clash of Kings TV show or a movie, these things have to be designed and built, right? And so that's what you're doing from now on. From now on is what you're doing is you're building these storylines, you're building these characters, and you're building these people that can cross over to different platforms.
Well, I see. Because for me, just a couple of days ago, we were talking with some friends, with some teachers here in the school, that nowadays so many video games, they pay attention, usually AAA games, they pay a lot of attention in how realistic they look, the pictures, a lot of actions. So they pay more attention in the artistic part, in how the effects or the image, more than in the story. And they say, well, maybe there's a kind of perfection, of course. And maybe long time ago in video games, 10 years ago, it was not like that. It was like they pay a lot of attention in the narrative, the story, what is happening. What do you think about that? Do you have any kind of thoughts about that?
I mean, a video game industry is a lot like Hollywood, right? Where you have studios that are just going to put out, like Godzilla type movies and Michael Bay type movies where it's just explosions and special effects. Like, you can't tell me Avatar has a story.
Yeah,
people don't go to Avatar, go to the theater to watch Avatar for the story.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And that thing is right, but they also people want we want realistic stuff, right? We want we don't want it to look cheap. We don't want it to look like it's there is some we can make it look indie when it's not indie, but there's different types for every person, right? And there's so many different variety of different players. I mean, even your grandmother, as long as she has a smartphone and she's playing a match 3 game, she's a gamer.
Yes.
And then that's the biggest thing is what has been defined as a gamer has transcended. I think Pokemon Go is the biggest example of that, where they uncovered the 38 plus, Gen. I don't know what Gen X or whatever it is, they're 45, 50, 60, 70-year-old people playing Pokemon Go, and that's where their money was coming in, and then they're like, well, and they're playing it religiously, right? And so we can't just sit down and say and that's the thing is we can't pigeonhole the player, just like we can't pigeonhole the games, right? And some games, all they want is explosions. They just want boom, 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 and sometimes story is put on the back burner, and I get that, right? Because it is still a visual medium, but that being said, during the visual medium parts, the narrative designer is still part of that process, and they're still part of that, those meetings and the conversations, right? So yes, there's not dialogue happening, right? But we're also ensuring that character is in the right spot at the right time, and everything's still connected, right? So, yes. And honestly, as a gamer, I don't want to read either. Yes, I want story, and yes, I want emotions and feelings and all that, right? But I also just want to play the game. So it's a balance between it all. There's great narrative stories out there in games, and there's ones that have zero, right? But then I'll argue, and I think Angry Birds is the best argument for this. As long as you have unique characters, unique setting, you have a story. And in fact, they not only got a story; they got 2 movies and 40 plus comic books, right? So that's the thing. So as long as you have unique characters, you have a unique game world, which is your setting, then any writer can tell a story that way.
Yes, you're right. I'm agree with that, because in fact, when we see movies or when we read books, sometimes, for example, if we want to watch a movie, we don't want to go deeper. You just want to watch a movie, very relaxed, very simple. Story is not necessary to be very deep and very I need to think about. So good, yes, is what I think is nowadays. Some games are they have not very deep the story. Okay, but they have a story. I
mean, it all depends on what you're looking for, right? Like some movies, you use movies as examples since you brought it up. Is that if you want to laugh, you go watch a comedy. If you want to be entertained, you might watch, if you want story and drama, okay, hey, when's the next Tom Hanks movie coming out, and that's where you look for those ones, right? But if you just, at the bottom line, you just want to be entertained. You don't want to waste your money, and you don't want to feel ripped off, and you just want to be, if I kill 2 or 3 hours playing a video game, as long as I enjoyed myself and I wasn't bored, if I'm bored, I'm going to shut it off, right? Or whatever, right? Or give it a bad review. But as long as I'm queuing in line, and if I'm queuing in line for my food and I'm past the time by playing, like a match 3 game or whatever, that great. I was entertained,
Yeah. And Kelly, I'm wondering, because you have been in Canada, of course. You have been working in Singapore first, China, in different places, Shanghai, in Singapore and Vietnam, and you are now in Tianjin. And how is the life there? And let me know if you have been always on remote or in office. What do you prefer? What do you like more about these cities?
Sure. Yeah, I'm originally from Canada, but I didn't start working in video games until I moved to Singapore, and then that was in the office, and then I worked in the office. Remote wasn't a thing until COVID, basically, right? And so since then I've been doing a lot of remote in between, but then going to the office as well. Just because of the situation, right? And just because living situations and stuff like that. So to me, I prefer being in the office, to be honest with you. And the reason being is because making video games is a very tactile, hands-on collaboration still, right? If you're not there, if you're not in the meeting, there could be something, especially as a writer, as a narrative designer, there could be something that's said that's not in the meeting notes that I could have snowballed into a cool idea, right? And also you need to play and work off of people, right? And there's something vibrant and alive about being in an office where you just they're in their little pods, they're in their little groups, right? Where like I'm a writer, I'm looking at black and white text on a screen all day. I'll get bored and I'll just stand up and walk around and I'll get my water and I'll be like, oh my god, what is that artwork? And then that's a character I helped design 2 months ago, and I'm like, oh my god, that looks gorgeous, and so there's something about that and inspiring about that and creative about that. I'm both ways. I've been working remotely quite a bit now for the last little bit. If you're professional, be professional, do your job. The biggest thing is this. I find when you're working remotely, silence is never a good thing. Silence is never a good thing, especially when you're the narrative designer and a writer. You need to communicate with your team. So I'll find myself poking. Hey guys, hey guys, what's this? I tend to do that a lot more often. Where if you're in the studio, they see you, that you're in the meeting. The process and formula is already there. Where I think companies are still getting used to remote and how yes, you're doing your check-in meetings and your check-in Zoom calls and this and that, but there's still that little. Hey, walk by a desk or waiting for the elevator. Oh my god, I forgot about this. Those little moments you miss when you work remotely.
Yeah, I think I don't know with most of the studios, but a lot of the studios, they're going back to the office because at least, I don't know, maybe not all of the positions, but so many positions like art, like narrative design, you need to communicate every time with people, and it's very, very good to have the feedback continuously. So it's probably very, very important to be in the same office with other people, and that's why it's very important to have good relation with the team.
Well, especially when you're starting out. I've been in the industry for over 7 years now, right? So I basically know my tasks, my jobs. I know the steps that are going to take to make this video game, right? But when you're starting out, man, if you don't have that one-on-one, that collaboration, or can just what does this acronym mean? What's the SPS? What's this? What's that? And all these things, right? So it's just I'll give you an example. Our lawyer, when I was working in the Singapore company, he started and he never worked in video games before, and then he's like, I was talking to him like how things going. He's like, man, I feel like an idiot. I don't know what you guys are talking about. This guy's like a smart man, right? But it's just because you just don't know the language, you don't know the what we're talking about. And then 2 years later, when he left, I said, sorry to see you go. He goes, you know what? My first month, I felt like the idiot. I'm leaving because I know there's a lot of idiots here. Because now he knows what we're talking about, and he's like, you guys are just doing the same things over and over again.
Yeah.
But the thing, you need to know this, right? And also we grow and we get better by being around other talented people, right? Because we're creatives, right? And so creativity sharpens other creativity, and it's really important, especially from a mentoring standpoint, is that you need somebody to help lift you up, and also as a narrative designer, I need to know how long it takes everybody else to do their tasks. I need to know, okay, if I want a new character in this level, this special character. I need to know how long it's going to take the concept artist to concept artist. I need to know how long it's going to take the 3D artist to render it. How long is it going to take the rigger to put the stuff in there? If these things don't happen overnight, and I have to be aware of these things, and you only do that by talking and learning and working with people. Or hey, is this too much text? Hey, UI guy, let me look at your screen, and see what this looks like in the game, so I know if it's enough text or not, right? And so these are things that you just get hands-on.
Yeah, I see. And you as a team leader, you usually all of your team is working on remote now?
No, so I'm not the lead narrative designer. I'm the only narrative designer in Virtuos Shanghai, just because it's project by project, and so hopefully we'll be hiring some more in the coming months, but we'll see. But yeah, and more likely I won't be remote by then. I'll probably be going to the studio if that's the case. But yeah, no, I've worked in studio. I've worked remotely. Either way, it's just a lot of communication. So at Outfit 7, I was working remotely with the guys, and a lot of that was communication until I was supposed to relocate. And then when I was at Goat Game, when I was at Elix, it was all in studio, and you're working directly with the people, hands-on. And really, it's just seeing how they, and that's the thing, is like seeing how they work, seeing what they excel at. Is really, because when you're working with as a lead, especially, you want to put people in positions where they can succeed. And so I it's my job to be in the meetings, and it's like, okay, we got like a romance game coming up. Okay, well, I know I'm not going to give to this guy. I'm going to give it to this guy because that's more his style, right? Or we need comedy. Okay, well, that's this writer, And so you want to put people in positions where they can succeed and put the best game forward and have fun.
Yeah. So basically, what kind of software you use to communicate with people? I mean, you use WeChat, or you use another, or Discord, or any other app? Because I guess you basically you are open every time to your colleagues can communicate with you.
Yeah. It depends what studio you're working with. So my Chinese studios, I use Feishu, which is Lark, which the American version is called Lark, and the reason being is because it's a translation tool as well. So anything I type in English comes out in Chinese. Anything they type in Chinese comes out. It translates all documents as well. It doesn't translate PowerPoint, and it doesn't translate Excel sheets, but it does everything else, which is great. So that's very simple. I've used Teams, I've used Meet, you name it. It all depends on what the studio uses, Microsoft, whatever it is, right? But yeah, there's always communication tools. You're always in group chats. Some like smaller studios are using Discord now. So that's how they communicate is through Discord. I haven't had to use that for business yet, because we're just using like the big corporate ones as well. But yeah, so it all depends. I mean, I rarely is it through email. Like rarely would I send anything important through email. It's usually through a specific group chat. So like I'm in multiple group chats, but then I muffle or mute the ones because it just becomes static noise. But there's specific ones where it's like, okay, if the lead chats, the designer chat, the art chats, if I'm working on the trailer, we create a group chat just for the trailer. If it's a cutscene, there's a new group chat just for that specific cutscene. And then yeah, any DLC stuff, new group chat. And then you go in those chats, you just be part of it. You don't always say everything, but like, because it's one of those things where like you don't want people criticizing your writing. You don't want to be sitting there criticizing everybody's art as well, right? Because I'm not an artist, right? I know if it looks pretty or not, but I also don't know if it markets, right? So I just do my job, they do their job, which is great, and that's the best environment you want to be in, where somebody says, I can trust you to do your job. I know it's going to be the highest quality. The client will give feedback or whatever like that, or somebody else, but it's do your job.
Yeah, the communication is the key. The communication, absolutely. And how many time do you usually you spend for example, now you are working in only one project, or into the studio you work in several projects, and for example you are full time with Virtuos, or you have time to do another stuff with other studios? And inside the Virtuos, do you work with only one project, or you can work in parallel projects?
So every studio is every studio is unique. Your contracts typically tell you, you can only work one project, so you can only work for one company at a time, right?
Yeah.
So there's non-compete projects, right? So it's just one contract at a time. Depending on like when I'm doing mobile games, I was juggling 5, 6, 7 games at a time. Now I might not be the only one on them. I might be part of the meetings, part of the stuff, then assigning them to narrative designers, but then reviewing their work and stuff like that, right? But typically what it is because there's ebbs and flows, right? So mobile games is, okay, incubate for a couple months, get it for soft testing, like that. There's 4 months there, okay, and all that's just high level stuff anyway, right? I don't have to go deep into it. And then while I'm doing that, I'm doing updates for the game that's live, right, and stuff like that. So you're constantly working on multiple projects. At Virtuos, I'm just working on the one project, but then I'll be brought in to look at pitches or internal stuff, and like in review documents and stuff like that. So it all depends on what it is. A narrative designer is basically a jack of all trades, and they should be brought in early on in the pitches anyway. And so it all depends on what it is. But yeah, mobile games and smaller games, I typically can juggle 3 or 4 games at the same time.
I see.
Because they're all at different stages, remember, right? So no game, you're not going to start 4 games at the exact same time, right? So they're all like moving trains. That's why I look at it. And I jump from one train to another train to another train.
Yeah, that's something I would like to ask for, because you suppose you are at the beginning of the chain of the pipeline in the studio in the project. Do you work maybe something in the mid part or at the end? Maybe you need to change anything, or you need to add maybe something for the advertisement or for the trailer of the video game, or you just focus at the beginning of the pipeline of the project?
Everything. Honestly, it's very rare you're brought in right at the very beginning, especially if you're a brand new hire. They don't just hire you because they're usually you're brought in to fix something.
Yes.
Or repair something. So I've really been brought in and said, okay, 2 weeks you got to rewrite this whole DLC. It's like, okay, and then you got to make as many quick notes as you can on the trailers, and you can't add anything, but you can only remove or change the text, right? Because the animation's already done, right? And then that's where it gets a little tricky. But yeah, so it all depends. Sometimes it's like, hey, we got an event coming up. Can you help us out, right? Sometimes I'm brought in just to brainstorm some new cool gameplay ideas. Sometimes I'm brought in to work on marketing. Sometimes I'm brought in to look at IP branding. Like hey, we have an IP. Can you like research the brand and give us some cool hints and stuff like this, right? So it all depends on what it is. Sometimes it's trailers, sometimes it's app store stuff. It's all over the board.
I see. Good, so good. And going to your personal life a little bit. So what do you do usually in your leisure time? And for example, now you are in Tianjin. How is the life in Tianjin? It's a nice place. You can go out. You can chat with people. You have options as cultures, options or social life like bars. What do you do usually there? So maybe you don't have time to.
Oh no, I always have time. No, I always have time. I always make sure I have time, especially for family. The work-life balance is very important for me. So I live in Shenzhen, China, with my wife. We watch TV shows. We love watching TV shows together. There's specific shows we save. So a couple nights a week we just sit and binge watch TV shows. On the weekends we like to go out. We like to go to malls. She likes to go to IKEA. We go get food. I like doing like going for different restaurants. On Sundays, if when the weather's nice, we get to play softball, which is like co-ed baseball together. So we do that. We travel to Beijing all the time because it's only 30 minutes by bullet train.
I see.
So we'll just do that. We like shows. We like art. We just did a Halloween pub crawl in Beijing last weekend for Halloween. So I mean, China is amazing. I absolutely love China. I've been here 4 years, and it's technologically it's ahead at least 10 years of every other country in the world. It's absolutely insane. I haven't had to use cash in 10 years. Everything's by a phone. I can order my groceries online, and they're at my door in 30 minutes. I can buy anything I want just by scanning it, and I can find it online, and they'll ship it to me within 2 days. It's absolutely insane as far as, or even just the fact that I can have one phone, 5G across the whole country. I can order a train, a plane, a taxi, a share bike, a bullet train ticket, all from my phone. Like just boom, scan, done. and it's so much easy and convenient. I'm telling you, like, it's unreal. China's been absolutely amazing, and it's a beautiful country, great to travel. So that's the thing, is if I have extended time and not just a weekend, my wife and I like to travel, so we like doing that as well. So yeah, and then plus I got 5 cats, and so we play with the cats a lot and just chill out, and like I said, watch movies, play video games, and watch TV shows.
Yeah. So I guess the in China is very, very. I think the word is maybe convenient. It's a very convenient place. I'm living in Taiwan, and I think also it's very convenient place. Even I don't know there, but here you can live. You don't need to speak Chinese because people is very nice. Usually try to communicate with you. So very, very, very nice and easy place to live. But is any kind of difficulty to living there in China? Because of course the culture is totally different. For example, from Canada, and Chinese culture totally different. So any kind of like inconvenient things or a kind of crash culture there with people
So I've lived in China, and I've lived in Asia itself for 13 years. So I mean, I've traveled quite a bit, and so I mean, it's not that different. The number one thing I learned before coming to China, and this is the most important thing I learned, was Ting Budong. Ting Budong is a Chinese phrase, and what it means is I don't know.
Ting Budong.
And so they start talking to you, and it's like Ting Budong, and they just, oh, okay, yeah, I get it, and they know I don't speak it, right? Because you learn hello, thank you, goodbye, how to order a beer. You learn the basics when you first come to these countries, and then I was taking Chinese lessons. Your smartphone is a great translation device. Alipay has incredible. Like it's so much better than Google Translate.
Yes.
And so I've been here about 4 years now, so I can order things online. I can order things, in person, and stuff like that. But it's just, you don't need it. And it's kind of refreshing, actually. It's just like you're here and you're just part of it. But then, I do get, I'm a 6'2" guy, and I'm pretty big. And so I do get stared at a lot. So it's a lot of they don't see a lot of foreigners, especially I'm in my wife's hometown, and my wife's hometown is 10 million people. But in our little area of 10 kilometers, I'm the only Laowai. I'm the only foreigner in the entire area.
Nice.
So which makes it easy, convenient for me, because if I go to the same restaurants, they're like, oh, it's a Laowai. They just know what I'm going to order. They just get my food ready for me. Or my groceries get delivered. They're just looking for the big tall Laowai, and they just, oh, here you go.
Lucky you, because also it's a very quiet place. It's really very good. But usually these kind of cities are mass. A lot of traffic, noise pollution every time. But to live there in a kind of a quiet place, so lucky.
I mean, I don't find that the traffic's too crazy here. Shenzhen's very, very nice, and very it's a smaller town. It's a tier 2 city, so not tier 1 like Beijing. Beijing, I mean, I can feel the traffic there. And then a little bit of the air and stuff like that. We just went back to Canada for 2 weeks with my wife and her family, and they just marveled at the fresh air and the blue skies and the nature. They were like, oh, it's a squirrel, and they're like, there's a rabbit, which is pretty cute. But I absolutely love living in China.
So good, really. So, and it's very different. I mean, for example, myself, I have tried to look for a job there in China. I love the Chinese culture, of course. Living here for 20 years, of course, I love. But it's not easy, because every time to find a job is not easy. How is for foreigners, thinking about foreigners who wants to go into the Chinese industry? Do you know any kind of is any kind of way or not? Is not easy, or is easy but you need to do something?
So typically, especially when it comes to narrative designers and game writers in China, they're typically transitions. So they're typically hiring English-speaking teachers. That's basically what they're doing, is they're hiring teachers. So the easiest way to get a job in China is to be hired as a teacher.
Yes.
So that's the easiest way to become an expat in China.
But I mean, video games industry.
I know, but then video games, it gets difficult because it gets harder because it's communication between the teams, right? And they'll hire specific roles. So, for example, narrative designer, because the text is in English, right? Where level designer, they'll be like, oh, well, there's no text, so it can be in Chinese. So it all depends on it depends the company, depends the studio. really it's about getting to know people and getting in there. So it's really about getting on WeChat, finding, like that's the other thing, a lot of the companies don't use LinkedIn. They don't apply outside of it, right? So they don't use the typical job searching platforms that a Western person would do, right? So they're very internal that way, right? So there is Chinese sites you can use, but unfortunately they're all in Chinese. And so it gets a little difficult there. There are great studios here, and there's amazing work coming out of here. But typically you have to go with the big studios like Virtuos, Tencent, and those guys. The big ones are typically the ones where they tend to hire a lot of foreigners because their games are trying to go in the foreign market more often. Because I mean, if you just get a game out here and it does okay in China, only in China, your studio is very well done. Because there's just so many people playing your game then at that point, sense. Right? So yeah, and then it's only when you want to broaden out do they expect to start hiring outside of it. But there is ways, there is platforms. I just don't know them off by heart. But afterwards I can send you some links.
I see. Of course. And just for finishing, what do you think? If there is some writer, of course you need to laugh about the writing. Let me know, Kelly, if there is some writer who wants to jump to the video games industry and they want to go to as you as a narrative designer. Is any specific class or course or anything to learn, any place to learn?
Well, the first thing is you have to write. No publisher will hire a writer if they don't have writing experience. So in my career, I've worked with guys who have written comic books like me, novels, plays. You could be a journalist. As you have to have a mastery of being able to write and tell a story, and you have to showcase that, right? So the first thing I tell them is write. Just write. And you have to be able to write in a variety of genres. Not just fantasy, right? You have to be able to write in science fiction. You have to be in modern day romance. You name it, because you don't know what that next game is going to be. Right? Especially mobile game, right? I mean, in 1 year in mobile game, I probably wrote 5 different genres. And so you have to be able to have versatility, right? That way you have to be able to showcase that, right? So you also have to be able to showcase that you can design characters, that you can build worlds. You have to also have an understanding of gameplay. Now it's not just writing trailers and writing cutscenes, because majority of mobile games don't have them. They'll have maybe an opening sequence, and that's typically your trailer as well. But yeah, so it's really important that people get off of writing screenplays, especially if they want to be a game writer. Like I said, 90% of my work has been done in Excel. So I share a lot of posts like that. I'm also working with GameDesignSkills.com, where I'll be doing some master classes coming up, teaching people how to become a narrative designer and a game writer. As well as my articles with them. So I'll be working with them as well. There is schools you can go to. I also teach part-time at AIV, which is an Italian school. They do a narrative design course, which is really good. So I supplement the students learning with some master classes as well. There's also those other ones online as well. The only problem is that people have to be wary of the fact that, are you getting a degree or are you getting a certificate? Because a certificate is nothing. I've got 20 some certificates in my portfolio, my LinkedIn. Nobody's ever asked for them. Nobody's ever looked for them. Nobody's ever done that. Also, a degree is the only thing that will help you get a work visa. Certificates and experience will not help you get a work visa. So if you're planning to live abroad or relocate for work, you are not going to get a work visa without a degree of any kind. You must have a degree, and so there is some writing courses that do degrees. They usually run through colleges and universities. So that's the other thing you have to be careful of, right? It's great to take these courses just to get experience, to get exposure, to also help build your portfolio. But it's really, most important thing is previous published work is the most important thing. Now, obviously, somebody like you have to show that you do it in English as well, right? So you could have published work in Spanish or, like whatever your language is, but you have to showcase English work as well, because that is the number one language that would be published in, right? Yeah, exactly. And so you have to have an awareness of that. And then the rest of it is just build your portfolio, get some credit, go on Twine, make some Twine stories, show that you can do some branching, interesting dialogue and narratives. And then just volunteer for game jams, get on game jams, volunteer for any indie. I mean, people say I'm not going to work unless they're paying me, but sometimes you need free credit, right? Sometimes you need that experience. And I've done free work before. I've done back-end work before, where like I'll work for a company, and then if their Kickstarter is successful, they'll give me some money, right? Just because if I have the time, if I'm not doing anything, why not, right? And it also just keeps the iron sharp and the storytelling there, and also if it's a right product, if it's a right fit, you want to do it, right? But you need that credit, and it's okay. And I know this is happening in our industry a lot of times where people are getting hired, they're doing the work, but the games aren't coming out.
Yeah.
Or the games are canceled, right? But it's okay. Like it's not okay because you don't have your name on the credit. But honestly, I haven't had my name on the back of a video game credit in 7 years. But it doesn't say that I haven't published 30 games, right? Because I've still worked at the company, I've still got there, and it's okay to say, unpublished RPG game, unpublished shooter game, canceled, SLG game, but then you still have to list the skills that you did, right? Because it wasn't your fault it got canceled.
Yes.
We're all aware of these things, right? So things change and things happen in the industry, and it's only going to get worse, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're doing a lot of remakes. That's why we're doing a lot of remasters, because they need instant money, guaranteed money, just like Hollywood is doing right now, right? It's just they want instant money for their investors and get it in there, and that's the hard part, right? But also and that's what's happening with the industry, is it's an investor's market. That these investor companies that bought they invest in these companies, and they want their money back. They give us our money, give us our money, give us our money, which is why they're putting out faster games and lower quality games, but faster. But also that's also why they're let go, hire again, let go, hire again. And we're going to be in this spin cycle for a while now, and so it's going to happen a lot, but it still doesn't mean you didn't do the work. It doesn't mean that you didn't learn something, that you didn't grow. In fact, I've learned more from the canceled games than I ever did the successful games.
Yeah, wow, very good advice. It's very good. And talking about the money, is it more stable to work in the video games industry? Of course, it's more stable than comics, of course. But if we compare with, I don't want to compare with writing, because writing, I know, is also not stable. Is maybe not enough to have a normal life. But how about in video games?
I mean, the great thing about video games is that it is a steady job. I mean, there's not many writing jobs where you get a monthly paycheck. You get like dental, you get medical, you get all these things, right?
Covered for once you are inside, maybe.
Yeah, and then it could be stability, right? I mean, like, you want to make it a career, right? That's the biggest thing, is you want to go from a job to a career, and that comes through hard work, professionalism, doing your job right, and then understanding the industry and how it goes, and then the luck is involved with that as well, right? But I mean, like I've always wanted to be a creative writer. I got very lucky, and I didn't even get in this industry until I was in my 40s. So I was like 41 when I got in the industry, and like it's like, so I mean, I love these guys coming up. They're starting way ahead of I am, right? Like I was like student, childcare worker, dad, indie comic book writer for a bunch of years, then a video game writer, and so like there's a lot more opportunities nowadays. There's a lot more studios being open. There's a lot more resources that are available, whether it's the stuff I'm posting online, or courses, or YouTube or conferences they can go to, where they can just network, get in there and soak up as much information, right? And also, this generation is also living on smartphones, right? Where I started with the NES, when it came out, my 10th birthday or 10th Christmas, I think it was my 9 or 10. It was my Christmas at 9 or 10. The NES came out, and I've been hooked ever since, right? But these guys, like, they're growing up with this stuff, right? They're growing up with VR technology. They're growing up with all these things where, that's the cool thing, right? So the industry is going to be good and amazing. And there's also new technology where more and more studios and people can just develop their own things on their own time, right? So, whether it's Roblox or stuff like that, where they can just go in these game engines, start building, start experimenting, and then get some experience, and then get into the industry.
Good. Okay, Kelly Bender, thank you so much. Really, thank you so much for all of your sharing. You're very generous to share all of this with us. So really, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Miguel. Thank you for having me, and it was great talking to you.
Thank you so much. See you there and good
All
luck.
right. Take care. Okay, bye.